Raising teenagers is hard. Understatement of the century. This is Mentor Select. Mentor Select. Parenting teens to be successful adults. Mentor Select serves parents who are raising teens. Every week, Derek interviews leading experts that work with teens, educators, counselors, mentors, and authors to give you practical tips, strategies, and resources that you can incorporate immediately to better connect and understand your teen. All while parenting them to be successful adults, focusing on social and emotional development, something that's left out of the classroom, but not in ours. Be sure to subscribe, share, and rate. This is Mentor Select, and this is your host, Derek Phillips.
All right, parents, you're in for a real treat today. We have Sergeant Robert Walsh with Arlington Police Department, and he's also the founder and president of the NEX Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization. How are you, Officer Walsh?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Doing great. I'm happy to have you on. Good friend Marcus introduced us, and had an opportunity to look at your website and see some great things you're doing. So I'm happy to share it with the Mentor Select audience.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So first, I guess best place to start is the NEX Foundation. Tell us what is the mission of the NEX Foundation?
Well, our mission is to invest in lives of young men as they make critical decisions as they evolve from adolescence into young adulthood. So our target audience or demographics are young men from the age of 16 to 21.
Awesome. And when did you start the NEX Foundation? What was kind of the inspiration behind it?
Well, I've been a mentor since 2002, since my undergrad days. And I think that's really where it actually started. And I participated in the school-based as well as community-based with Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and just evolving from being a law enforcement officer and interacting with the community. I found that it was definitely a joy, and I understood that, you have to give back to the community. So although the NEX Foundation officially started in January of this year, okay, I've been mentoring young men for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So why is, your focus young men?
As a law enforcement officer and being a mentor for so long, I have seen, a lot of the mentor programs are geared more so towards the younger generation, the younger kids, and men in general, because, we're the foundation of households. And
I totally agree.
And the things that are really going on in society really affects us. Let's look at the climate of today's, all the protests and everything. It's mainly geared towards men. And I feel like if we develop a foundation as young men, with young men, we will definitely be developing stronger households. So, and then, the age, I've also noticed that, at the age of 16, they kind of throw young men away. It's unfortunate to say that. And everybody's like, but why 16? And I think 16 young men start to feel like they know everything.
Yeah.
They
I remember those days.
Yeah. And we've all been there.
Yeah.
But for me, 17 is, in the state of Texas, you're criminally liable as an adult.
Wow.
And so we want to hope to make a positive impact on them before, they actually make it to the age of 17. So we can prevent them from moving forward in that aspect. So.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And just being able to target a certain demographic and age group that really allows you to specialize and become an expertise in, the issues that they're struggling with, and really come up with those services that is best suited for them. So I love that. So Sergeant Walsh, how long have you been a police officer?
13 years next month.
Awesome. Long time. Was definitely appreciate your service.
Hey,
Yes.
thank you.
And as you mentioned, especially in this climate, it's just a lot of hostility towards police officers, which I think is unfortunate, and I believe is counterproductive. How are some ways that you're combating that hostility from the standpoint of a mentor?
I think just setting an example of what a police officer does and how we live on an everyday basis, and not making excuses for our actions. One of the things that we focus on in the NEX Foundation are police interactions, social justice, things that I know a lot of my young men may encounter. So um, for instance, the biggest thing is our traffic stops. One of the most important encounters that you may have with the police officer is during a traffic stop. And I say that because as that officer is making their approach to the car, we're nervous because we
Right.
don't know. There's a lot of unknowns. And the young man is probably pretty nervous because it may be the first time they've been, stopped on the traffic stop. So there's a lot going through both parties' heads.
Right.
And I tell my guys, I tell them it is important for you to understand how this interaction should go. And I tell them all, and exactly like I told them, I said, hey, I'm going to give you the cheat sheet. You are going to encounter this at some point.
Right.
It's important that you pass this test. And I furthermore just explaining to them, no matter how bad you think this interaction is with this particular officer, live to tell the story. I tell them all the time, live to tell the story. So if that officer is being irate and then you become irate, it doesn't do any good. It's counterproductive.
Right. Escalating the situation.
Correct. Somebody has to have a level head and just be honest with you. A lot of what they see in the media is what they believe.
Right.
It's important for them to know and understand if they don't hear anything I tell them. Remain calm. Be able to tell that story. Tell someone about it, because we know now that over the past 5 to 10 years, things have been changing. Body cameras have definitely enhanced officer accountability.
Right.
And so I tell them, the officers are human too, and they may not be having the best day, and it doesn't make it right, but have an opportunity to tell that story, and be professional, and more than likely you'll make it out of that encounter.
Yeah, that's really, like I say, that's the cheat sheet.
Yeah.
It's not that complicated, but yeah, it's a matter of, I like how you point out, seeing it from both sides. I think it's a big issue that the media doesn't portray accurately, where they more so just portray it from one side. But from the officer's side, that's one of the most dangerous things they can do is a traffic stop. And a lot of police officers are killed doing traffic stops. And it's just a split second where, hey, an officer can lose their life. It's easy to say in hindsight, like, well, should have did this or that, or should have. That's always hindsight of 2020. But yeah, I think from both sides, it has to be accountability.
Yes, sir.
It's very, very important. Now, more about what the NEX Foundation. So I had an opportunity to look on your website. One thing that stood out to me, you say you want to help young men build sustainable character. Can you elaborate more on that?
One thing that I believe we all have, me, you, is we rent the title of our job. And when you're done with that job, whether you move on, you retire, you're no longer that person, but your character is something that no one could ever take away from you.
True. Yeah.
So sustainable, character is something that no matter what, if we build a foundation, you are who you are, and we want to make sure that you have some value in your character. And we believe that just being polite will go a long way, and just a prime example, one of my young men, he's actually my youngest, he's 16 years old. And during the pandemic, the most important thing for me was for these guys to get out and do something, idle minds.
Yeah, it could be trouble.
And so he wanted, we did a lot of volunteering, and he said, I think I'm ready for a job. I said, okay. And so we went through how to prepare for a job interview, and we did mock interviews and things, just to kind of present himself. But, his parents had already done a good job of just instilling in him a strong character. And just the interview on the phone, when he got to the job, the guy said, I was already going to hire you.
Wow.
The way you presented yourself. And I couldn't help but smile, and although I honestly believe that's just something that a part of his character that he already had, I want to take credit in that. But just the character to say, hey, working is a habit. That's not something that, no matter if you can go and get all the education you want, but working is a habit. You've got to build up to that. And we believe in instilling character is short-term goals, and it looks different for each young man. It definitely, depending on their background, it looks different. Sometimes it's as simple as, hey, give me 30 days of being respectful to your parents, 30 days of coming home on time, just the small things that let them know that, life's a marathon. It's not, a sprint. So just take your time, and we're building that foundation that helps his character.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Come down to that foundation, the fundamentals.
Yes.
And you're really taking that holistic approach and starting with, hey, we're going to get these fundamentals down. Then you can build on it from there. And sky's the limit. But certainly that young man you mentioned, he probably already had it in him, but mentorship certainly helps enhance it and brings it out. So so you can take some credit for it as well.
I appreciate it.
Indeed. But I want to go back to the cheat sheet, just because that's so important. Like I said, most people are going to encounter law enforcement, probably do a traffic stop. Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned the cheat sheet that you teach your young men. I guess from a parent standpoint, is there anything different that they should teach them, or in addition to what you already outlined?
I think just being respectful, and that's the most important thing.
Right. Because
everybody's calm. Everybody, you can think a little bit more, you can think more clearly when the situation's calm. And I would tell them everything that they do, ask for permission, on that traffic stop. And it may be, overkill, the officer, yes. But I tell my guys, as you reach for your insurance and your hands are 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, is it okay if I reach into my glove box? Yes. Is it okay? My wallet's in my back pocket. Is it okay? So just being calm, taking their time. And people, someone may think that's silly, but that's important, especially for young adults, because, the world's fast and they're used to, and we all had to learn patience. We just don't have. So I would tell the parents to talk to them about those interactions before they actually get into the vehicle.
Yeah.
And I know the day goes by, we've all got tasks, but for me, that's an important task. And I literally just went over this last week with one of my young men, because the same 16-year-old, he was making a decision on should he purchase a vehicle. And we decided, that family already had a vehicle, and we had to talk about it. Okay, you're going to be in a vehicle by yourself now, and this is your car. These are some of the things that you have to keep in mind. And it's just reminding them.
Right.
Be respectful, ask for permission, and beyond all that, drive safe. If you drive safe, you may not have that encounter.
It's the reason that young men, especially teenagers, young men are the highest risk as far as insurance.
Correct. And it goes even further than just the young men. As a supervisor, it goes back to us holding our officers accountable too for the interactions. And so in Arlington Police Department, we have to do random body camera checks and DVR, which is the cameras on the vehicle. And I want to make sure that my officers represent the department, the citizens, as well as me as their supervisor, to the highest, level of respect. And like one of my lieutenants told me early on when I promoted to sergeant is, this is my level. My level's up here and you have to come up here.
Right.
Because I'm not coming down to you. So that trickle effect, I have the unique opportunity to touch both ends, so does that get lost on both ends? Yeah, sometimes.
Right. Like every human.
Correct.
Yeah, I love that in terms of, it comes down to respect. The young man or whoever's being pulled over by a police officer, respecting the police officer, and also the police officer respecting the person they're interacting with. And that does so much to de-escalate the situation. I've been pulled over many times. And one time I actually come a concealed gun carrier and I got pulled over and the officer asked me, like, do you have your gun on you? Like, yes. But I already had my hands on the steering wheel. It's like, all right, like, take your left hand and open the door and step out. He was calm and respectful. I was calm and respectful. And hey, he checked out, make sure everything was good once I stepped out the car, and I was on my way. But yeah, certainly could have went a totally different direction if I was hostile and like, why, and not being respectful. Yeah, it could have went totally different. And I got out a lot of tickets, I think. Well, I should have got a ticket for speeding, but I was respectful.
That definitely makes a difference.
Yeah. So it goes a long way. And then what I think is so important about what you're doing and the NEX Foundation is you as a police officer, like you say, it's about setting that example and showing those young men that, hey, all police officers are not bad. All police officers are not looking to do harm to you versus what the media is showing you. But hey, I'm showing you, you've seen a real live example. And I was recently on a panel interview and with I think it was several other men. And a lot of those men had past bad experiences with police officers. But for me growing up, I had a lot of positive experiences with police officers. I actually ran on the POW AAU team for police officers. So they were some of them were my closest mentors. So I was able to speak to that experience. And I think a lot of them on the panel were shocked, like, huh? Like, what? But yeah, it's just a matter of just having those positive interactions.
Yes, sir.
That's so important. Now, in your current role as a sergeant, you say you're a supervisor, and also are you currently working on the streets, or are you in the school, or what is your current position?
Well, currently I'm one of 3 school resource sergeants. So I don't directly work in the schools, but I supervise the officers at the school.
So with school resource officers in Arlington, is it just high school or middle school as well?
Middle school and high school.
You certainly can speak to maybe some of the challenges that I guess teenagers are experiencing right now, just from that point of view, and then also working with them, mentoring them through the NEX Foundation. What would you say are some of those challenges that teens are facing that maybe their parents may not know about?
I don't think it's changed so much as far as the peer pressure. I think we all understand that. But for me, I was in investigations prior to transferring to the school resource unit. And of course you hear about mental health, but man, it was an eye opener for me to realize how much the kids struggle with mental health. It may be a situation where they may not actually be diagnosed, but just bullying, just trying to keep up with the Joneses, keeping up with the current trends. That, it's extremely, extremely stressful for the kids, and which leads to fights, which leads to them not wanting to actually come to school, or which leads to them skipping class. So I've learned that a lot of that leads to the mental health issues. And the NEX Foundation, which was extremely important for me, was one of the first things I did was when I built a board, I contacted mental health professionals as far as social workers, as well as school counselors and educators just in the school. So my board, I have a dean. He's a dean of instruction. I have a school counselor as well as a social worker, because those aspects of the kids, I don't really understand, and I have a grasp of it because I'm an officer, but the nuts and bolts of it, I just don't understand it. I know what it looks like, but I don't know how to physically help them in that social, emotional issues that they may have. So those were the things that really just opened my eyes on how many reports and incidents that we encounter regarding mental health.
That's a really good point. And I think especially in African American community where it's like that negative stigma to even bring up when you think about mental health or needing to see a therapist or get help. And I like I said, that leads to a lot of other things, skipping school, fights, maybe drug use. It can spiral out of control. Now, what are some ways that maybe parents can either identify some of those red flags and then also help their teens reduce that level of stress that they may be experiencing?
Just spend time with them. Get to know them as they currently are. And we all feel like we know our children. But it's important as they transition, they are going through some things that we may not necessarily understand, because a lot of the parents that we encounter, they believe that I can chastise them physically, because that's the way, I was raised this way. I obtained whippings and like I said, I'm not afraid to say that it took a month supervisor school that recently where we had to go through like interactions with Generation Y and Z and all to really realize, wow, that's true. Like we have to identify other ways, innovative ways of actually getting to our kids and encouraging them. And then we also can allow them to just do what they want to do. And we see that a lot. Don't be afraid to take that cell phone and ask questions. Where are you going? Who are you with?
Gotta have that structure and rules.
Yeah, I want to meet the parents. I want to meet your friends, because those were things that we did in the past that worked. But I also learned again that it doesn't all work with this generation. And you have to be realistic. If you're not realistic and making adjustments for your kids, then you're not doing them any justice. And again, to go back to the same conversation I had with one of my parents last week about the car, I said, you've got to allow him to make some decisions. You can't completely, parent him the way you were parented.
Right. It's no one size fits all.
Yeah. You're going to lose that battle. I had to learn that even supervising younger officers, I had to, and mentoring has definitely opened my eyes to that. It's like, wow, this is true. Yeah. This is definitely true.
Yeah, so true. And also, like say, in your role as a supervisor, you realize you can't thank your reports. You have to, like say, identify those innovative ways to reach them and to influence them, and they also hold them accountable. And same for parents. I'm big on that. Where just because maybe it worked for you, that doesn't growing up, their parents did. Hey, kids, this is a different world. Like it's a lot that the previous generations wasn't exposed to, and you just have to take that into account and be adaptable and creative for sure.
Yes, definitely.
Now going back to the NEX Foundation's website, mentioned something about just the core values of a NEX man. What does that mean?
The core values of a NEX man is what we expect from them. The things that ultimately they represent. When they wear the NEX logo, they represent all of us. And it's important for them to understand that you are an individual, but you're part of a team. And I say, invested in you to be an upstanding citizen, to look like a leader, to act like a leader. And so the core values of a NEX man is just being not afraid to stand out or stand alone, because it's not always going to look like you're doing the right thing. And it's not always going to be easy to do the right thing. But you have to understand that you represent your brothers. Everyone else is in the organization. You represent them, and we know what our values are. We know what our goals are, and it's not always easy to stand alone, especially as young men. Because of society and what peer pressure, and it's something that I encounter myself being African American, being a police officer, and being a supervisor as well. Sometimes you're not always very popular. But,
people like to rebel against authority of all forms.
And so having that foundation and knowing who you are is just the core values of a NEX man, understanding what your goals are, understanding the ultimate goal, and understanding that sometimes, it's going to be lonely going against the grind, but that's just what it is. And we're trying to develop that foundation where you're comfortable doing the right thing.
Exactly. And I just think it's incredibly important just how you all focus on just that leadership. What does a leader look like? What does a leader act like? And setting those expectations for them. Like, it's not going to always be easy, but as a leader, you're representing your brothers. I think that's so important. And I think any successful organization, they have those core values and mission that everyone who is part of the organization needs to be on the same page and represent that, represent that professionalism. So, and I guess for families, it's just as important. I guess what are some ways that parents can incorporate those strong values for their teens? Make sure they're representing the family in
correct.
That light.
Correct. I think you hit it right on. I mean, you're not only representing yourself, you're representing your name, if that makes any sense. If that means it to you, representing the family name should be important, because no matter what your title is, again, when they strip you down and when you retire, you are who you are still. You're renting that title, definitely. But, though the values that are instilled in you at a young age are going to stick with you, So as parents, I would tell them to continue to encourage, especially the young men, because we're hard headed. God, we're hard headed.
Yeah, no doubt.
and and you've got to constantly reiterate, what the goal is and what the mission is. And that's something that I do. One of the first kids I mentored when I was here, when I moved to Arlington, our goal early on, he was in the 5th grade. I'll never forget it. And these are our goals. Our goals, we're going to graduate, we're going to at least go to college, and we're going to try it. If it's not for you, well, let's develop a plan. And I tell all my boys, just no babies, please, no babies. And
good advice.
And we got him to graduation. He graduated.
Yeah.
Went to college, and recently, since the pandemic, he told me, "Well, Robert, college isn't for me."
Okay.
Fine, not a problem. But what's next?
Right.
You should have a plan. And he's like, "Oh, I've got a plan. I'm going to go and work here." And I said, I understand it. It's not a problem. It's going to be tough to go out and work in a warehouse, but It's not saying that you can't do it. Just understand that the path that you're taking is going to require a little bit more. And I'm okay with that. I am definitely okay with that because he made that decision. He understood. He tried it. And I'm hoping that if he bumps his head enough, he'll turn the other way, but he has a foundation and he understands who he is. And I was so proud to just hear that and hear his grandmother call me and say, "You did a good job," because, he understands. And this was, gosh, he's 23 right now. So.
That's priceless. Yeah. Planting those seeds, helping build that foundation. And he's going to be okay no matter which path he takes.
Yeah.
It's going to be all right. I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier about how you see a lot where basically parents just kind of let the kids do what they want to do. What is the consequences of that, and why is that not a good idea?
The consequences of it is the interactions with me in uniform, because the reality of it is that's typically where our young men end up. They always have some interaction with law enforcement and especially the minorities,
Right.
And we know where that leads from there. And we try our best to really make that impact at 16 or even younger, because we don't want them to go down that path. Because once you have that record, it's amazing how a small theft can really impact you at
Right.
17 years old.
The
When
rest of
you're
your
applying
life.
for a job. Yeah, and it could be something extremely small, but when you think about it as an employer, do you want somebody who steals? Are you really a thief?
Right.
Maybe not, but maybe it was just a bad decision. But in that eyes, you may be considered a thief. And I have boys who are either on probation or have been on probation. And I tell you, and I say this, when people tell me or they identify my boys as at-risk youth, I quickly turn the table and I said, we have future leaders.
Yeah.
Because in order to be a leader, you have to experience something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And think about it, we've all had supervisors or people we worked with just no experience, and so when people ask me why young men and why that age group, because why not? And those that have made mistakes, I don't mind that, as long as they are in an active phase of their life where they realize I made a mistake and I want to do something to change it. So that shows me that they're already transitioning to that leadership role, and they've experienced something. So it's a lot easier for them to help the next young man who may be in the program, who may be struggling with the same thing, who hadn't actually crossed that path yet.
Right.
And so for me, I won't turn those, type of young men away.
It's fortunate for them that you won't, because it's never too late, and to get them at that prime phase in their life, it can really make a big difference and change the trajectory of their life. And what you said about like reframing at risk and the future leaders, I think that's remarkable. And it's kind of was the theme behind my first book, Poverty Powerball, like turn adversity into your winning ticket, because those experiences is what make you who you are. And then you can channel it in whichever way you choose. And I just choose to channel it in a positive way. Like, hey, I experienced some hard times, but it gives you so much insight that makes you a future great leader. So,
yes.
Yeah. Wow. Sergeant Walsh, you've given us a lot of good stuff over this interview. As we get ready to wrap it up, I wanted to ask you something where I can give some unique insight, is just how are your police officers doing? And there's so much going on where the negativity and just being hit from so many sides, from the community, from politics, to the media. How are police officers doing?
Well, I can only speak for Arlington and for the officers that I've encountered. And I think with the death of George Floyd, we all were just appalled by those actions. And
right.
And I tell you, like I told my family and everyone else who's asked me, that did something to me, and it's still hard to really put in words, but just to see it. And it's one of those moments you'll never forget where you were when it happened or when you first heard about it. And we were all appalled. And then the protests start. And again, it's tough, especially for, the African-American officers. Not saying that it's not for any of my other counterparts. It's just, you're going to start getting the phone calls from family.
Right.
And it's tough. And although you take that uniform off, again, you're still who you are. So I think the conversations I have with my officers is, this uniform shouldn't make you who you are anyway. So it goes back to that core value. We understand that sometimes people only see a uniform. They don't care what patch it is, and the things that happen, we all have to embrace it, because although you didn't actually do it, you wear the uniform, and a lot of the officers are probably, are hesitant sometimes, to make those interactions, those traffic stops, because they're afraid that they may be next.
Right.
They may be the one scrutinized next. And police accountability is big within the Arlington Police Department. And And I tell all my guys, if you're doing the right thing, you'll be okay. Now, you may go through the fire, but if you're confident in your morals, your values, and the training that you've given and you were given, and you're doing things right, then go out and do your job. Because if you go out complacent, you can get hurt still.
Exactly.
Make it home. So it's tough. Honestly, right now it's tough, of course, with COVID, and we were already limiting our contacts with the public if we didn't have to because of that. And now it's a lot tougher, So like I tell my guys, be professional. Be the officer that you wanted to be when you took the job. Because we all knew that we weren't going to get rich. And this is definitely a job you have to love. You have to love people. And so these are conversations that I've had with my white counterparts, and just, man, tell me exactly how you feel. Tell me what really, give me the real understanding of how you view things, because there are a lot of great, white, Asian, Black, Hispanic officers. And sometimes, they're getting the brunt of it.
Yeah.
And one of my former detectives, we talked and he said, "What do I do?" And I told him, I think you're doing it, because initially when he and I met, we had the conversation years ago that he didn't meet a Black officer, a Black person, until he went to college. And I was like, oh my God. But again, can I blame him for that?
Right.
I can't, but I can blame him for not getting to know the community, because you're an officer now. So you've got to learn about that particular culture. So
right.
I think the officers that aren't afraid to get out and learn the cultures and understand that wearing this uniform, people don't see the patch. They just see a uniform and understand that it's part of the job. So you have to remain professional. Then I think those officers are doing just fine.
Awesome.
The other ones, I don't know.
Yeah. It's a lot to deal with. So
it's definitely
my heart goes out to you all, and definitely keeping you all in my prayers, your safety, and just have the fortitude and continue the professionalism and accountability. But also, I think it's important, just as important, for just organizations like the NEX Foundation and community leaders and parents to also just hold everyone hold accountability. Yeah. Right. I don't think we're going to solve it by just pointing fingers and blaming. We have to be accountable and have these conversations and humanize each other, and not us versus them. It's definitely have to work together. Indeed. Sure. Sergeant Walsh, I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day and just sharing with us so many valuable tips, resources, and strategies to help parents help their teens make that transition into adulthood. Really happy to see the impact that the NEX Foundation is making, and I know it'll continue to grow and make a greater impact. That's remarkable. As we're ready to wrap it up, you have any closing words, remarks you want to leave the parents with?
Well, again, thank you for having me. And, we only accept a small amount of young men for obvious reasons, because we want to be hands-on.
Right.
And like I tell everyone, this program could be a mile long and an inch thick. And that's not what we're aiming for.
Right.
We're aiming for
quality.
Quality. So anyone's interested, as far as volunteering or just even hearing more about our organization, just you can send me a message, email me, Robert Walsh at the NEX Foundation.org, and again, check our website out, www.thenexfoundation.org, and we'll be happy to come out and even just talking to group. Anyone need just some inspiration or just insight on law enforcement, I'm always here. So whatever I can do for you or anyone else, just give me a call, give me an email, and I'll be here.
Fantastic. And I highly encourage the parents, anyone listening, to check out your website, see how you can volunteer, also your nonprofit, you can donate to support. Because, just those positive interactions with law enforcement is so important. It's invaluable and can ultimately save lives. So, keep doing what you're doing, Sergeant Walsh. We really appreciate it. And stay safe and definitely keep you in our prayers.
Thank you. You too.
We get it. That's why Derrich interviews leading experts that work with teens, educators, counselors, mentors, and authors to give you practical tips, strategies, and resources that you can incorporate immediately to better connect and understand your teen. That's why we do the show. Be sure to share Mentor Select with other parents of teens. Follow us on social media at Mentor Select to stay up to date on the latest tips, strategies, and resources for parenting teens. Send your questions and comments to darrich@mentorselect.com. Tune in every Wednesday for new episodes. Till next time, this is Mentor Select.